But in this case, we're talking about snakes. Dozens of snakes were released into the wild in North Florida to eat other invasive snakes.
Florida released hundreds of endangered snakes to fight invasive pythons and venomous reptiles. The internet exploded, calling it the stupidest conservation plan in history. Wildlife managers were ridiculed for fighting snakes with snakes. But then something almost impossible happened. And suddenly, nobody was laughing anymore. How did a plan universally dismissed as insane become nature's perfect answer? What turned Florida's biggest joke into conservation's boldest success? Join us as we find out what happened after Florida released hundreds of snakes into the wild. The collapse nobody saw coming. Between 2003 and 2011, scientists kept running the numbers, thinking they had to be wrong, but they weren't. In parts of southern Florida where Burmese pythons had taken over, raccoons had dropped by 99%. These were the clever ones, the animals that usually find a way to live anywhere, even in cities. They raid garbage cans, steal pet food, and outsmart traps. Yet here, they'd vanished. Opossums were down by almost 99% too. Bobcats had fallen nearly 90%. Marsh rabbits were gone. Foxes, gone. Even young deer were being swallowed faster than the herds could recover. It all started back in the 1980s when people began buying Burmese pythons through the exotic pet trade. They were sold as small, calm snakes that fit in glass tanks, fascinating to look at with their shiny patterns. The problem was, those cute 12-inch babies didn't stay small. Within a few years, they turned into 15-foot predators that could eat chickens, pigs, and even alligators. When owners couldn't handle them anymore, they dumped them into the Everglades. Hurricanes destroyed breeding centers and set more loose. A few slipped away on their own. The warm, swampy land turned out to be perfect. Plenty of food, no enemies, endless space. In their new home, the pythons thrived. They had no natural predators, and the native animals had no idea how to defend themselves. A single female could lay nearly 100 eggs at once. The young grew fast, reaching breeding age within a few short years. By the spring of 2025, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission had pulled more than 23,000 pythons from the wild. It took hunters, volunteers, tracking dogs, and high-tech sensors to find them. Yet, despite all that work, the population barely seemed to shrink. Then came the chain reaction nobody saw coming. With so many mammals gone, the smaller venomous snakes suddenly flourished. Rattlesnakes, cottonmouths, copperheads, coral snakes, they spread into farms, neighborhoods, schoolyards, and trails. What started as an ecological mess had turned into a human health disaster. Wildlife officials began to understand something simple but grim. You can pull out snakes forever, but unless you rebuild what used to keep the balance, it'll never stop. Florida had lost something vital, an old predator that once kept those venomous species in check and held the wild steady. So what could fix both problems at once? What had disappeared from the picture that, if brought back, might rebuild the balance nature had spent thousands of years creating? Wild plan becomes a punchline. Florida's big announcement felt like something designed to go viral. The idea sounded wild enough to grab everyone's attention. The answer to swamps overrun with pythons and venomous snakes was to release even more snakes. These weren't just any snakes. They were eastern indigo snakes, the biggest native snake in North America, and listed as federally threatened since the late 1970s. They used to be everywhere across the southeast, but by the early 2000s, they'd almost vanished. Years of habitat destruction, roadkill, and illegal pet trade had wiped them out in most of Florida and nearby states. The new plan was bold: breed hundreds in captivity and release them into restored longleaf pine forests, the kind of places they used to share with gopher tortoises. To biologists, it felt like the last real shot at bringing back a top predator the ecosystem badly needed. The public didn't see it that way. Headlines screamed, "Florida to fight snakes with snakes." and overnight it turned into a joke. Social media caught fire with memes of snakes taking over the state. Talk show hosts had a field day. One of them cracked, "Florida's solution to chaos is just more chaos," and the crowd loved it. Twitter called it insanity. Reddit threads ripped it apart. Polls showed most people hated the idea. Parents worried their kids might run into snakes, homeowners feared dropping property values, and hikers started wondering if trails were still safe. What began as science became a punchline. The phrase "rare snake killers" didn't help either. People heard "killer" and panicked, imagining threats to humans. They missed that these snakes were harmless to people and hunted other snakes, including pythons. Everyone laughed and scrolled to the next viral post. The jokes kept coming, then faded like every other internet trend. Nobody stopped to ask the real question. What if that so-called ridiculous plan wasn't ridiculous at all? What if these snakes were actually built for this exact problem? The plan hadn't come from panic or guesswork. It came from years of field research, careful observation, and patience. These snakes weren't picked at random. They were eastern indigos, a species nature had already molded into the perfect answer to the very mess Florida was struggling with.
Working to help balance that ecosystem back out by reintroducing these eastern indigo snake.
This is the 9th year state agencies have released eastern indigo snakes back into the wild.
The problems Floridians complained about, the increase in venomous snake sightings, damaged crops, and rising pest populations, weren't random. They were symptoms of what happened when an apex predator was erased. So when scientists talked about bringing the indigos back, they weren't trying something reckless. They were repairing a broken system. What everyone laughed at as absurd was actually nature's own blueprint waiting to be restored. What made the eastern indigo different from every other snake? And why would scientists bet Florida's ecosystem on releasing hundreds of them? Biological weapon evolution built. The eastern indigo snake almost sounds like something out of a comic book. It can grow longer than 8 feet, making it the biggest native snake in North America. Its scales aren't just black. They shine with a strange blue glow that changes with the light, sometimes showing hints of purple, deep ocean blue. Looks aside, its real gift is in what it can survive. The indigo snake barely reacts to pit viper venom. While most animals run the moment they hear a rattlesnake's warning, the indigo moves in closer. It doesn't need venom to fight back either. Its power comes from pure muscle and a kind of natural immunity that almost no other animal has. When a rattlesnake sinks its fangs into it, the venom that would kill most creatures within minutes does almost nothing. Scientists think this comes from special proteins in the indigo's blood that block the venom's effect before it can harm. Others believe it has cell receptors that simply ignore the venom's attack. The details are still being studied, but the outcome is clear. This snake can take bites that would kill a human or a dog and keep moving like nothing happened. Because of that, indigos hunt fearlessly. They track other snakes by scent and even follow them into their burrows. When they find a rattlesnake, a copperhead, or a cottonmouth, they attack without hesitation. Their meals include almost every kind of snake, venomous or not, plus rats, birds, frogs, and lizards when needed. That flexibility helped them survive across the southeast for thousands of years. They kept ecosystems balanced, making sure no one species overran the rest. And though they're powerful hunters, indigos don't harm people. They'd rather slip away than fight. Seeing one used to mean luck, a sign the land was still in balance. Nature had already built the perfect hunter to keep venomous snakes in check. Still, it makes you wonder, how could something so perfectly made for its world almost vanish? What exactly did we do to push it that far? The century-long erasure. Long ago, the longleaf pine forests covered close to 90 million acres of the American Southeast, stretching from Virginia all the way to Texas. It was a huge open world of towering pines, wiregrass, wildflowers, and sunlight filtering down to the ground. Fires moved through regularly, clearing underbrush and helping the trees release seeds. Hundreds of species lived there, each shaped by that rhythm of sun, soil, and fire. By the end of the 20th century, almost all of it was gone. Logging took down the old trees because the wood was strong and straight, perfect for buildings. Then came farms. Cotton, cattle, and crops replaced what had stood for centuries. Cities and suburbs took the rest. Parking lots and malls spread where the wire grass used to grow. For the eastern indigo snake, every acre lost was another step toward extinction. These snakes depend completely on gopher tortoise burrows to survive. Long tunnels deep underground that offer shelter from heat, cold, and predators. When the tortoises disappeared because of deforestation and fire suppression, the indigos followed. Without burrows, they had nowhere safe to rest or breed. Then roads cut through the last bits of wild land. The snakes move slowly, covering miles in search of mates, and highways become deadly traps. Countless indigos were crushed trying to cross. The survivors became isolated, unable to mix with other populations. The pet trade made things worse. Collectors loved their glossy blue scales and calm nature, so thousands were taken from the wild. Breeding adults vanished, leaving broken populations behind. And as if that wasn't enough, rattlesnake killing campaigns wiped out more of them. Gasoline and chemicals pumped into burrows didn't just kill rattlers, but indigos too. By 1978, they were federally listed as threatened. A few years later, sightings stopped entirely. Fire suppression sealed their fate. What once was a bright, living ecosystem turned dark and tangled, leaving the indigo snake to fade quietly into memory. If the species was hanging by a thread, with only a few scattered and cut-off groups left, how could anyone hope to bring it back? What kind of effort could undo 100 years of damage? Restoration takes place. While people joked online about Florida's plan, the team at the Oriane Center for Indigo Conservation was quietly doing serious work. They'd spent years testing and refining their methods, building on research and experience. It all started with finding healthy snakes from the last wild populations and a few from captivity, making sure their genetics were diverse enough to avoid inbreeding. The hatchlings entered what they called a Head Start program that lasted 2 years. During the first year, they stayed at Oriane in controlled rooms where they learned to hunt. They started with small mice, then moved on to bigger prey as they grew stronger. Every snake's health was checked every day. If one showed signs of infection or parasites, the staff treated it right away. Growth and feeding were recorded constantly. After a year, the snakes were moved to Welaka National Fish Hatchery. There, life got closer to what they'd face in the wild. Outdoor pens had real plants, shifting weather, and natural temperatures. By the time they reached 2 years old and about 4 or 5 feet in length, they were big enough to handle most predators, but still young enough to adjust to the wild. Each snake was tagged with a small microchip so it could be identified later. Some even had radio transmitters implanted so scientists could track them in real time and study their survival. Choosing where to release them took years of preparation. The Apalachicola Bluffs and Ravines Preserve, over 6,000 acres of restored longleaf pine forest, was the chosen site. Crews burned overgrown areas to bring back open grassland, the kind gopher tortoises, and by extension, indigos, needed. Tortoise burrows were mapped and protected. By 2025, after years of planning, 40 young snakes had been released, bringing the total to more than 200. Every detail, from timing to habitat, had been thought through. This wasn't some wild gamble or blind hope. It was careful work built on planning, funding, and years of effort from people who knew exactly what they were doing. But all that meant nothing without one thing, real proof. What kind of discovery would finally show it had all worked? The moment that rewrote the narrative. For about 6 years, the goal was simple, just keeping them alive. Seeing a released snake months later was a win. Watching it act like a normal wild snake, exploring, hunting, and finding a place to live, meant things were on track. The telemetry data showed they were moving long distances, using burrows, basking in the sun, doing everything a wild snake should. But survival alone wasn't enough. It was like keeping a patient on life support. The real goal was to see the species recover on its own, to see wild-born offspring from those released adults. That would mean the population had finally become self-sustaining. In 2023, biologists at Apalachicola Bluffs found something they'd been waiting decades for. During a routine survey, using drift fences and camera traps, they came across 2 eastern indigo hatchlings, with no tags or radio transmitters, no signs of any connection to captive breeding. These were wild-born snakes, the first ones seen there since 1982. After 41 years, a new life had appeared where the species had vanished. That meant the released snakes had survived, found each other, mated, laid eggs, and the young had lived long enough to be found. It was proof that everything had worked. The habitat was good enough, prey was there, burrows were available, eggs could hatch, and the babies could make it past the predators that usually wipe them out. It wasn't just survival anymore, it was recovery. The indigos had become part of the ecosystem again.
Indigo snake is a large natural predator for a lot of animals in the areas where they live. They eat anything that moves in front of them pretty much, including birds, small rodents, even other snakes, including venomous snakes. So they help to balance the ecosystems.
Monitoring showed more signs of change. In places where the snakes were thriving, venomous snake encounters dropped. Farmers said there were fewer rattlesnakes and copperheads near their barns. Wildlife centers noticed fewer animal snake bites. Camera traps even caught indigos eating venomous snakes. One was filmed wrestling a pygmy rattlesnake, another swallowing a copperhead whole. When scientists studied their stomachs and droppings, they found another benefit. The snakes were eating lots of cotton rats, rodents that destroy crops and spread disease. That meant indigos were helping farms just by doing what came naturally. Then came the real surprise. Some indigos were eating young Burmese pythons. Adult pythons were too big, but hatchlings and juveniles weren't. Those were the ones that mattered most for the python population to grow, and indigos were picking them off. It gave Florida an unexpected advantage, a native predator hitting the invaders where it hurt most. Seeing that success, the Alabama Wildlife Federation decided to follow the same path. By 2019, they'd started their own program in Conca National Forest, using the same careful methods Florida had proved could work. That same year, Alabama got its own bit of history. Researchers found a wild-born eastern indigo hatchling, the first seen in the state in 60 years. It proved the plan could be repeated. What had worked so well in Florida could work in other parts of the Southeast, too. Still, the question hung there. Would this kind of success really shift how people saw conservation? Would all the jokes and doubts finally turn into respect? When mockery becomes model. Georgia started scouting for good release spots across protected longleaf pine areas, while South Carolina began checking the health of its preserved lands. Mississippi ran studies to see if its gopher tortoise numbers could support indigos. What once looked like one state's crazy experiment slowly grew into a working model for restoring life that had vanished. It showed that with enough effort, money, and solid science, even local extinctions could be undone. The lessons didn't stop with snakes. Scientists saw how deeply tied the indigo's fate was to that of the gopher tortoise. The tortoise builds burrows that the indigos rely on, and the snakes, in turn, help tortoises by keeping raccoons and armadillos in check, animals that often raid nests. Saving one meant saving both. This changed how people thought about conservation. It wasn't just about one animal anymore. It became about fixing whole systems and restoring balance piece by piece. Bringing back the longleaf pine meant helping indigos, tortoises, woodpeckers, squirrels, and countless plants. Fire management helped everything stay in rhythm. Land protection started meaning community protection of every living thing within it. At the same time, Florida's python fight was evolving fast. The Python Action Team, set up under the state's wildlife agency, stepped up removals using better tech like drones and heat-sensing cameras. More land was opened to hunters, and new rewards drew skilled trappers. Between May and July of 2025, over 1,000 pythons were removed, nearly triple the previous year. Some Everglades zones saw their workloads drop by almost 90% as snake numbers crashed. Now, multiple agencies and tribal groups work together under one plan: part removal, part education, part restoration. The story spread far. Colleges taught it. National Geographic ran photos. PBS filmed the scientists. People who once mocked it now shared clips online with pride. Today, over 200 indigos roam wild again. They eat venomous snakes, control rodents, and even pick off young pythons. The results speak clearly. Habitats restored, bites reduced, predators balanced. Problems remain, sure, but one truth stands firm. Nature can recover if we give it the chance. What seemed foolish turned out to be genius, and Florida's gamble became proof that the wild can heal when given the right hands to guide it. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. Also, check out another interesting video by clicking on the link shown on your screen. See you on the other side.